It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time, give it to me easy and let me try with pleasure.
We had the training. We fought to protect the weak. But training doesn't prepare you to hunt someone you used to call brother. He has left us no other choice. If we don't stop him, there will be nothing left to save.
Lady Geeks and Gamermen, Splintershield, aka
the Hunter himself.
Are we getting survival for episode 3 in Division 2? At this point, we have episode 1, and it was announced previously what we would be getting with it. Episode 2 has also been announced, Last Castle, Pentagon. Episode 3, well, they gave us a teaser trailer for episode 3, but still haven't announced what it is. Here's what we know from the E3 teaser and reveal. Going back to New York, it will be summer, there will be cleaners, Coney Island will be involved. Best of all, Keener will be the objective. But at this point, this could simply mean another expedition map like Henley College for all we know. What is episode 3 and why all the mystery? The first thing that I think is very interesting is that there was a hidden side mission in Division 2 that sent us to a museum where there was an exhibit with a very interesting subtitle. New York After Dark, a return to the Big Apple, January. Since this was seen in March after launch, many community members were already speculating that it was a clue that something was coming early next year, where we would be going back to New York. The E3 teaser trailer has now confirmed our suspicions about this, of course, but I mention this purely because there was a clue about it. This is build-up, this is hype. This alone leads me to believe that whatever episode 3 will be, it is not just an expedition map. The next item comes from an interview Arekkz did with Julian Garrity and Matthias Carlson, the creative director and game director of The Division at the end of 2018.
Is there going to be any sort of similar experience to Underground in Division 2 whereby, you can kind of jump into it, quickly kind of loop around and get back out?
We haven't confirmed plans.
Fair enough. How about Survival?
I'd love to see Survival come back.
Okay, yeah, I would love to see Survival come back. That was one of my favorite things.
Nothing really said about a new Underground mode, and then I'd love to see Survival come back. There were actually multiple interviews leading up to the release of Division 2, where Julian was asked and said this same thing about Survival, that he would love to see it come back. But next, the Bombshell Jacket podcast, episode 99B. They were able to sit down and ask a few questions Julian Garrity. He said something different, which I found to be extremely interesting.
It's also no secret that survival is an integral component in Division culture. And we have heard you previously say that you'd be surprised if you didn't see it return in Division 2. But if it were to come back, what's something that you would like to see for survival?
Well, one of the biggest things is that I'm convinced that survival can be much bigger than it was in the first game. I think the fact that there was a paywall in front of it, that it was part of a DLC package, that split the community and didn't allow it to take as much space as it could have. With the Division 2, as we're not releasing any content like that behind a paywall, it would be, one of the biggest stumbling blocks being removed from people playing it. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I'd look to change and to improve people's contact with the game mode.
Okay, great.
If it ever.
If.
if it ever makes it out.
We're not confirming survival right now.
Definitely not.
Now, they make the caveat that this was not confirming survival, but let's put that on a shelf for a moment. We know that the Year 1 DLCs for Division 2 are free, and Episode 3 is the only one that hasn't been fully disclosed. And Julian would love to see it come back, and thinks it could be bigger, more successful if it were not behind a paywall. Connecting the dots between the mystery around Episode 3, the clue about New York, and Julian's comments, these 3 facts alone are enough to make me think survival is coming. But despite all that, and as much as I want to believe that Episode 3 will be survival, nothing else points specifically towards a survival game mode so far. Yes, the fires that the cleaners are starting could be the new blizzard mechanic. Instead of a stinging cold blizzard, we have to protect ourselves in a blistering firestorm. Instead of seeking for experimental antivirals left behind in the dark zone, we are tracking down the megalomaniacal Keener. But we just don't know. There are a few more clues for us to explore, though. The first one is simply, why are we going back to New York? Yes, it's because we know that Keener has gone back to New York, but they could have just as easily kept him in Washington, D.C., narratively. So there's got to be some reason why Keener is there, or why they are sending us back. Maybe there's a key resource there, or maybe whatever game mode this is better suited to a hyper-urban setting like Brooklyn, rather than Washington. Now, I'm biased. I want it to be Survival 2.0. So my mind immediately starts thinking, well, the Washington, D.C. map doesn't seem too great for survival like the New York map was. There's just too much open area in the middle. It's too rectangular and horizontal. So they're probably making a big enough part of Brooklyn to do survival, and it's going to be awesome. But I know that I'm biased. The Coney Island beach hardly seems like a better area to play in, and even more open than the middle of Washington, D.C. Let's listen to how Terry introduces the teaser trailer. I think there could be another clue there.
This brings us to our third and final episode of Year 1. What if rebirth was not about bringing the world as we know it back to life, but the opposite? One man holds that power, and humanity itself is at stake. Agents, it's time to engage in a manhunt.
I think we can all agree that he's talking about Keener, and Keener's rebirth is wiping out enough people that America will never recover and will be reborn into something else. If Episode 3 is not survival, the best case scenario I can think of so far is that we're getting some kind of King of the Hill mode, where one player gets to be Keener, and they'll be uber powerful, and will be manhunted, and everyone else is trying to take them down. That to me is sounding more plausible than survival at the moment, with what we know so far. And that doesn't sound bad at all, but what we know is still so limited that both survival and King of the Hill could be way off. A few other notes. We see the agent take the pistol off the downed cleaner, and scavenging for weapons and gear is definitely a survival mechanic. However, this doesn't necessarily mean anything, as agents are always picking weapons and gear off of enemy NPCs. Plus, in the same shot, we see the other two holding their specialization weapons. This is a detail that could be the nail in the coffin for the Episode 3 is survival argument. There were no signature skills in survival, so it's very suspicious that they would include specialization weapons in Division 2 survival. Survival as a game mode feels so uniquely suited, so right for the Division world, as we are in a post-apocalyptic world and survival mechanics are already part of the standard game. I feel like it would be a huge missed opportunity to omit this mode from Division 2, but I'm still beyond excited that we finally get to go after Keener. But at this point, I think I've covered just about everything there is to talk about. But stay tuned, you can be sure I'll be covering any Episode 3 news or survival news that drops. I want to give a little shout out and thank you to Arekkz And Bombshell Jackets, thank you for letting me use your clips. Until next time, guys.
What are you hunting for?